Welcome to the 50 Shades Greener podcast, the show where three widely different worlds collide in the most chaotic way possible. Hosted by me, Raquel, the Spanish eco queen, adopted by Ireland 20-something years ago. Kiri, the Amsterdam-based loony with zero filter. And Nasia, the Dublin-based Indian princess bringing a spice and sense. We're here to unpack culture, identity, sustainability, and all the madness in between. Three women, three backgrounds, one microphone, and absolutely no filters. So let's begin. Today, we're going to dedicate this podcast to Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. Quite obviously, it's close to our hearts here at 50 Shades Greener. So, Kiri, can you tell us about the history of our educational systems?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have some pretty big opinions about our current educational system.
Surprised.
I will try to keep them. Yeah, I know. I have big opinions on, I think, everything. I will try to keep them out and be a little bit unbiased, but let's see. But to give a bit of backstory, our current education system developed around the time of the Industrial Revolution. So before the Industrial Revolution, education was community-based. It was passed on through doing, by relationships with the environment, through spoken word, things like this. It was a lot less controlled. It was very, it looked different for each individual, etc. Enter the Industrial Revolution. And factories who needed obedient workers that would show up on time, they would do repetitive tasks without complaining about it, and basically take orders.
Robots.
Yep, like robots. Our current education
That reminds me of the current
designed...
systems of AI.
Yeah. It's designed to make us robots. But yes, so basically historians account the modern education system that actually showed up in Prussia, where indeed they needed factory workers, they needed obedient soldiers, they needed people to just toe the line and do what they're told. So they developed this education system where, students are grouped by age, not by interest. They have like set course blocks. There's a bell that announces the time to go and the time to start, much like would be in a factory. To produce this. So that's a bit of the history on the education system.
Oh God.
I know.
A bit shock of that one. I wasn't aware of the factories' influence on education, and it just strikes me as bonkers. There are educational systems that are still based on those principles, I guess. Even though obviously there's been a lot of changes, but it seems really shocking to me.
Yeah, to me as well. And it's one of this is where my big opinions formulate, is because the more I started digging into it, the more shocked I was. And if you look into it, any of the issues in our current educational system, they're all the same. It's like students are not engaged, they don't have the attention, they don't feel creative, we're not inspiring creativity, students lack critical thinking. And so far, the solution to all of that has been more standardized tests, more control, more obedience, not, hey, let's take a step back and see what else we can be doing.
Yeah. It's really funny. It definitely reminds me to my own experience in the educational system, where I always felt that I fail in my education. Whether now as an adult, I realized that it was the educational system actually failed me. But still we continue to blame the learner rather than, looking at the system as a whole and saying, right, we need changes here. We need to modernize what we do, because, we're trying to teach students that success come from, taking instruction and being quiet and being good, but real life doesn't really work like that, to be honest. And you come to the real world and you're like, manage people, lead meetings, and you're not used to those things. Nothing prepares you for stuff like that currently in our school system.
Agreed. That being said, there are alternative education systems. So, fun fact, I was in a Montessori school for my first years of education. And if you don't know what a Montessori school is, for the audience, it's basically a system of education designed around teachers are not there to teach, they're there to like facilitate learning through exploration, discovery. You're not grouped by like strict ages. You have like clusters of, kind of age groups, and you're free to move about and do things throughout your day, kind of as you choose, and then teachers are just there to facilitate that. Yeah.
So this is what you are, how you are then, is it?
That explains it.
This is how we got an Amsterdam-based loony from Montessori school.
No, we're trying to promote Montessori schools, not like...
It's good to be a loony. All the best people are crazy. But Nasia, I remember in episode 1 of our podcast a few weeks ago, you were talking about a very different kind of educational system. Can you remind us about that, maybe?
Yeah, it's called the Gurukul style of education, and the whole premise there is basically going back to nature. Because everything that the human mind essentially needs to survive on this planet is something that can be learned from how nature survives, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the philosophy we need right now to basically break through, like you mentioned, the very regimented style of education we are somewhat trapped in. We're always told grades matter and that you need to pass your exams and you're continuously assessed, but it's also the whole idea of rote learning. That's how I grew up with my education style, that you could just mug up everything, learn everything, and then reproduce it on the examination paper and get a good score, and you were a good student. In hindsight, I always question myself, did I really enjoy that? Did I like that pressure of being judged based only on my marks and my grades, right? And I think the Gurukul style of learning steps away from that because it gives people the understanding that you can go explore, you can have critical thinking, you can be curious about everything around yourself. And I think that in today's day and age is so important, that we keep questioning, because if we again get stuck in that whole regimented way of education, we're not really learning anything. And if we're not learning anything, we're not giving back to society. So how is new thought ever going to arrive if we're all thinking the same way?
Particularly as we were talking as well in the one of the podcasts about AI, if more people these days are getting now even their own ideas now come from AI. So how are we ever going to, like you say, think differently? Or I think a really important word that you said there was curiosity.
Yeah.
I think if we lose curiosity, we just kind of lose the will to leave, to be honest. I mean, what's there if you're not curious about new stuff? Like, are we just going to be stuck in the same stuff all the time and become the robots that maybe some people want us to become? Who knows?
Yeah, definitely.
It works in a lot of favor if we are all robots.
Yeah.
A lot of people would tend to benefit from that, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But
not questioning.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like, when you're not questioning, like you said, when you're just taking whatever is thrown at you, not being critical, and I think that's also where I feel a lot of funding for research is getting stopped, especially at the university level, that funds are just not available, because I think that's a direct threat to, I don't know, the ideologies that run the world currently.
The traditional systems,
Exactly, so that's why I think funding is stopped for a lot of PhD scholars, because research is where the mind really opens up to the opposite of what is governing our lives right now. And nobody wants you to go down that lane, because then that means less profit making, you don't have a hold over what people are consuming, and I think that's a space that those who govern the world right now don't want us to venture into.
Do you know, when we decided to do a podcast on education, I never thought the word profit would come into it. It amazes me how
but it
slowly seeps into everything.
Yeah, it is. You want schools make some of the biggest profits. There's so many of us who are learners, right? We all get enrolled in these very expensive schools. In a way, I think that's a business in itself. And then it's a spokesperson almost for the government that holds the fort, that you preach what you want learners to believe, and that becomes the truth, right? And that's the absolute narrative that governments want to push, and schools become the oasis for that almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Who controls the knowledge and information flow has the power. They control the people.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we
Yeah.
did see very, very scary kind of examples of this in the US only last year, you know, where I believe they weren't trying, they have changed the curriculum. They have changed what things can be taught or not. And that is an extremely dangerous situation, I feel. Because that will affect generations and generations to come unless those changes are revoked at some stage. So education plays a huge role in the lives of people, and it's scary to know that a lot of it is profit driven, you know, because then we don't have the best interest of the learner at heart. And I guess we have to make the caveat, it's not every university or not every school where profit is more important than the learner. But it seems to be definitely an antiquated system that is not built for purpose for the societies of today, I guess. Right.
Absolutely.
So just changing gears slightly, I guess I wanted to touch on the type of education that we deliver here at 50 Shades Greener. And when we talk about climate action, particularly when it comes to government level, most people usually think about, you know, the big things, the wind farms, the electric cars, the charging stations, you know, governments arguing at conferences. But one of the most powerful climate solutions is in our classrooms. And education is one of the most effective ways to reduce emissions, improve resilience, and create long-term changes, because people that are well educated on climate action make more informed choices, they understand climate risks, and are better equipped to adapt and innovate to, you know, the consequences of climate change. But there is something slightly ironic, I guess, about this, because, you know, here we are investing all this money in the high-tech solutions when one of the answers has been sitting in those classrooms this whole time. And we continue to underfund education, but we are overfunded technology. So it seemed quite ironic to me. I think another thing that is really important to mention, obviously we learn about the Sustainable Development Goals ourselves, even in a weekly basis, but goal number 4, quality education, is not only good for those receiving the education, it actually benefits everyone in their communities, because educated communities tend to have lower poverty rates, better health, lower crime rates, and more sustainable ways of living. So education actually helps support all of the other sustainable development goals, and it strengthens everything around the society that we're building. So maybe the real point here is that saving the planet isn't just about what we build or how we build it, but it's about what we teach and how we teach it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think of all the SDGs, quality education is really the pillar upon which the other 16 are built. It should, or at least it should be. It should be the basis. Like you said, it's right at our fingertips if we're teaching children to care about the environment and have relationships with the environment, with each other, teaching basic, you know, respect and care and empathy and critical thinking, then everything else above it becomes so easy.
Empathy and care, I always thought there were two values that we really need to foster, at least in like primary years, you know, primary schools and nurseries. How do you develop that empathy and care for nature and other species? It should be a critical point as well in our curriculums.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just adding to that, even the whole the community living, you know, where you're sharing resources, because we're living such isolated lives that I think we need, and the loss of human relationships, I think we need to go back to the principles of just community living, of, you know, being each other's neighbors, you know, sharing your resources, and that just sense of responsibility, even to like give back to nature at some point, you know, because we extract so much out of it, right? At what point do we say, okay, you know what, I've done what I could, you know, but now I need to give back to nature in some sense. And I think the way education has to be reshaped or reformed now is to instill that idea that, you know, you don't have to fit into the systems that already exist, but you can build new ones as well. And I think that's the principle that I think education now needs to really focus on. You know, I think that will be the true success of education, when you're allowing people to just question alternate ways of thinking and systems that are already in existence right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because we are losing the personal touch with each other. And I guess social media has replaced a lot of those interactions that before would have been, you know, when I was a teenager, like I I didn't have a mobile. I used to pick up the house phone and ring my best friend and, hey, we'll be meeting in half an hour, and we'll go and meet and chat. Now you can just send a WhatsApp or a Facebook message, or sometimes we feel like, oh, I'm sharing this memory now with them, and that's my interaction for the week or whatever, and we forget that human contact is so, so important. And that's something we have in our classrooms as well, is that human contact. So again, education is not just what you learn, but it's also the environment that it creates around people. It's really, really important.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on quality education, guys?
Oof, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Question everything. Just question the system you're in, question the education you're being taught, question the lessons you're being learned. Don't reject it outright, but digest it for yourself and follow up. See how you think of it.
Very good advice, Kiri. Any final thoughts, Nasya?
What Kiri said. Be critical. Be critical.
Is that
be the loony in the
Montessori
room.
school education,
Exactly. Exactly. Be the loony in the room.
That's a great way to end it. So thank you everyone for listening, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye.